Example of how you might answer that, all right? So for most of these questions, really talk about skills, okay? And how you fit the job description, which is why you have to know what the job description is before you go in. So talk about what you've done in the past, what you're kind of working on right now, and the fact that you can contribute to this organization, okay? Employers always want to know what you can do for them. Keep that in the back of your mind. What can you do for them? How can you help them solve a problem? How can you help them kind of fix something? How can you add something to what they already have? Okay? So that's really why they should hire you, is you can add. You're a good addition. Okay, so that's general open questions. So you'll get a lot of those. You also may get some of these things called behavioral questions. Have you heard of behavioral questions? Yes? Yeah. They're becoming really, really common, actually. Most interviews have quite a bit of behavioral questioning in it now. Okay? The thinking behind it is that your past behavior is a good indicator of your future behavior. Right? So if you can talk about something that you did well in the past, the employer thinks, oh, they could do that well for me in the future. So that's why they do behavioral questions. It also gives you a chance to really talk about specifics, right? Something very specific that you did, okay? So most of them are skill-based. So it'll always be, tell me about a time when, insert skill, right? So these can be relatively easy to prepare for, right? So that part that I told you earlier, where get the job description and highlight the main kind of skills, and then just think to yourself, tell me about a time when, and put that skill in, and make sure you prepare for each of those skills. Okay? A lot of it might be like how you work on a team. Employers always want to know that. Or how you worked on a project. So they're looking for like your time management skills or your organizational skills and just how you contribute. Often people will ask about some sort of conflict, right? How well do you get on with others? How do you adapt when things don't go well? Okay? There's no wrong answers. Employers just want to know what you learned, right? Or that you did adapt and that you had some, like a growth point. It doesn't matter if you made a big mistake, right? It's what you did with that mistake that matters the most. Okay, so a really good way to answer behavioral questions is through this STAR method. Have you heard of this? Some? No? So keep this in your head, STAR. So what you want to do is you want to describe the situation, okay? So a little bit of context. What were you doing, right? What sort of project you were working on? Where were you? Then you want to talk about the actual task, okay? Then you want to talk about the action. So what did you do, right? This is actually the most important part. Employers don't mind as much about what the situation was. They want to know what you did, okay? And then the result. They're also very interested in the result part, okay? So what did you achieve? What did you learn? What was the outcome, okay? So I think situation should be the shortest. Sometimes when people answer this question, they tell me like all of the detail about the situation and they never get to the action or the result, right? The most important is the action and the result, and the task a little bit. So the situation should be short, right? You're just setting a context. Okay, so here's an example of how to answer that, okay? So about a time when you demonstrated leadership skills. All right, so you see the kind of short situation, what you had to do, the action is the longest part, right? And then the result, very important. So when you're answering these behavioral questions, I think a good way to prepare is, like, you can't have a different experience for every single skill they might ask you in an interview situation. It's just nearly impossible. You're never going to keep all of that straight in your head, okay? So I recommend having like 4 different examples of something that you've done, right? So something from maybe a previous job you've had, part-time job, or a previous internship, or a student organization, or volunteering, okay? So think of different examples, maybe 4 different examples, that you can then use for different types of skills, right? So have like one example that maybe fits 3 different skills, and then another example that fits 3 different skills, okay? Because most things you do require more than one skill, right? So have things that fit various different skills so that when they ask you something, then you already have an example ready to go, okay? It is okay to repeat a similar example during an interview, okay? Just don't have one example for every single thing, right? But it is okay to maybe use that example 2 or possibly 3 times, okay? So you don't have to have something different every time. Employers know that, you know, there's a limit to how much experience that you've had. You're college students, okay? So they're not expecting something different every single time, but they want a little bit of variety. So when you're preparing, think about a few examples that you're going to have in your head that you can talk about in a STAR format, and then you're just going to use those for various different skills. Okay, that help with your preparation? And that stops as well, like you just writing out an answer and memorizing it. Because when you do that, it will never fit this type of question. And that's where you'll get tripped up. Also, in an interview, there's nothing worse than if someone asks you a question and you have to think for a really long time about an example, right? That's why you have to have them prepared at the start, right? That you're like looking off into space, let me think, right? Have it ready to go. Any questions on STAR? There's no way really to predict, you know, how many stars you'll get, how many behavioral ones you'll get, and how many just open ones you'll get. I think it'll probably be a mixture of both, okay? And then the last type of questioning is the questions that you ask, okay? This is also very important. You should always ask questions at the end. Interviews don't go well if you just say, I'm fine, okay? Having questions at the end shows that you're interested in the position. It shows that you've done some research, that you've cared enough to think about some things to ask, okay? So you should always have between 3 and 6 questions. And then you're gonna just have to adapt to like maybe how much time you think that you have left as to how many questions you're gonna ask, right? So if you think you have a bit of time, you could ask all 6, right? If you think it's a bit shorter, ask 3. That kind of type of thing. Don't ask a question that can easily be found out on a website, right? Because that's not going to go over well. But think about the job itself, right? Ask questions about what training you might get. Ask about what a typical day looks like. Ask what types of projects or assignments that interns generally work on in that organization, right? They're all good questions to ask. So come prepared with, 3, 5, 6 questions. The other thing about you asking questions is it kind of turns around that you are almost interviewing them as well, right? You want to make sure that this is a good fit for you too, okay? You want to make sure that you would be happy in this position. So by asking them questions, that's how you're going to get those answered, right? Does it seem like people that you want to work with? Can they have a conversation with you, right? This is the part where it'll become more of a conversation, a bit more of a backwards and forwards. Okay? Always ask, what are the next steps? Okay? So one of your questions should always be, what are the next steps in the hiring process? Sometimes they'll tell you that before you have to ask it, right? But if they don't, make sure you always ask, right? I think in this instance, it will just be one interview, right? But you want a timeline. Sometimes you might have 2 interviews, and so you would want to know, is there another interview? Would there be a second interview? But you definitely want to know a timeline so that if the timeline runs over, you can follow up. So very important. Don't sit in silence and don't ask questions. All right, so after the interview, right? Phew, it's over, yay! You can go out. You've aced it. What do you do next? All right. So, as I said, very important for you to ask about the next steps. Just make sure you do that. It's really important. The next thing that you really should do is send a thank you note. Have people heard about this? Good. Yes. So, while you're at the interview, see if you can get a business card, right? Or have prepared beforehand that you actually know who the person is and their email address, all right? And then send a thank you letter within 48 hours of your interview. The next day is better than 48 hours. 24 hours is better than 48 hours. But if you're really busy, 48. It just shows, again, that you're interested, all right? It shows professionalism. And it just comes across as kind of just good etiquette. And if no one else sends one, and you do, that's really good points in your favor, right? They'll remember you more. So short, very short email, right? Thank you for giving me the chance to meet with you and talk with you about the position. I really enjoyed meeting everyone. If you feel like you had a question in the interview that you did not answer well, this is a way to kind of talk about that in like a better way. You can kind of cover it a little bit in the letter, right? So if you think you really flubbed something and you could have done better, you can address that a little bit in the letter. You can say, I want to kind of just, make sure that you understand that I have this type of skill. I don't feel I got my point across very well, okay? I mean, don't write an essay. Still short, but there are things that you can address. And then at the end of it, just make sure that you say, I'm very interested in this position, okay? And then because you know the timeline, if it kind of runs over, so if they say, we'll let you know within a week, and you haven't heard, leave it a couple more days, and then you can call the office or you can email to find out, what's happened. That is a perfectly okay thing to do. And again, it kind of just shows your professionalism, all right? At the interview, I was told I would hear in a week. It's been over a week. I just want to follow up, okay? And then you'll know one way or the other. All right. So just quickly, different places that you can go for help with this. We at the career counselors at the Vic Centre are very happy to do mock interviews for this process. We're based in Jester, A115. You can call for an appointment. And these are kind of the things that we do. Like we do resume reviews and we do mock interviews. We help with major and career exploration. We have career assessments. We also do academic advising in our office. And we're the only office on campus that actually works with students from all majors. Okay, so it doesn't really matter what college you're in or what your major is. We will work with you. You also have your own college career services office, right? Every college on campus also has a career office. So if you're in the College of Natural Sciences, you can go to them for a mock interview too, and a resume review. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Yep. Right. Okay. So the question was, how do you address the question about your weaknesses, right? So the rule of thumb is try and talk about it in a positive way, right? So you can talk about your weaknesses, but maybe talk about ways that you're working on them, right? Things that you want to do to overcome them, okay? So you might say, I really don't like public speaking, but I've been trying to talk more in class, right? And that's a skill that I definitely want to work on. So it's okay to admit a weakness. That's not a bad thing. In fact, they kind of want you to. They want to know that you actually are like a humble person and that you have some weaknesses, because nobody is perfect, right? But try and answer the weaknesses question by saying the weakness and then talking about a growth potential that you have or something that you've already done to address it. Okay? That answer that? Hi.
Well, we got one last question, folks.
I don't know. Do they have references for this? No. So this question was about references, okay? And it really depends. I wouldn't talk about them unless they ask you, all right? If they want references, they will ask you either in the application form or they'll ask for them at the interview, all right? So I wouldn't necessarily bring it up. I think for this process, you probably don't need them, okay? Okay, thank you.